Gambia government's position on the relentless smear campaign against the Gambia. The government of the Gambia has been following events with utter dismay since 1994. The smear campaign orchestrated by some Western powers using selfish and unpatriotic individuals, Gambians and non-Gambians. The enemies of the Gambia have been sponsoring Gambians and non-Gambians to set up organizations with media facilities outside of the Gambia to mount a shameless campaign of lying against the government and people of the Gambia. These people and institutions specialize in lying and providing false attestations for would-be asylum seekers, using the main opposition party, UDP, as a platform for such nefarious activities, thereby casting a very bad and negative image of both the government and noble people of the Gambia. Such campaign is mounted both at home and abroad, providing fake attestations for members of their party to migrate abroad to seek asylum, with total disregard to the damage they cause to the prestige and good image of the people of the Gambia. Our only crime is that we have since 1995 said that the Gambia's petroleum and mineral resources will not be given to any company or country at the detriment of our people, and therefore we will not accept the 5% royalty being offered for extracting these national resources. It is from then on that two Western countries created and funded the UDP in Atlanta during the Atlanta Olympics, with the belief that the Mandingos form the majority of the Gambian population, and therefore a Mandingo tribal party, the UDP, was going to win the 1996 elections, thereby running the country by the whims and caprices of those Western powers. As Allah the Almighty will never support evil and treachery, this tribal group, disguised as a political party, not only failed to win the election in 1996, but continues to do so till today and will never rule this country. No sane person will believe that this unpatriotic Mandingo group known as the UDP will gain power to help Western powers loot the petroleum and mineral resources of the Gambia. Fabricating lies by involving in treachery and sinister machination against the people of the Gambia will neither work nor succeed, as 99% of the Gambian populace are decent Allah-worshipping Muslims who are always praying for this country and its leadership. The Gambia government stands for three things: the worship of Allah and our total submission to His will, to ensure that the Gambia will never be recolonized in whatever form or manifestation, and the Gambia will never be enslaved again. Gambians will realize that in both the UK and US, facilities have been created for so-called Gambians to set up organizations and media facilities to spread nothing but lies against the Gambia by making false, outrageous and unfounded statements about the state of human rights in the Gambia. Gambia's human rights records since 1994 are much better than what obtains in the UK and US. The peace and security of this country will never be compromised, especially as it concerns the treacherous and unpatriotic Gambians living in the UK, US and other parts of the West. This government will never succumb to blackmail and will maintain our stance in the fight against neocolonialism, racism and exploitation, despite the massive but shameless smear campaign. Our relationship with the West deteriorated when we refused to accept royalties of 5% for our petroleum resources and less than 3% for our mineral resources. To our utter dismay, we were informed that all Gambia's petroleum resources were reserved exclusively for the United States of America. This claim was confirmed a few years ago when the Charge, or Deputy Head of Mission of the U.S. Embassy in the Gambia, during an interview with the Daily Observer newspaper, announced that the Gambia's petroleum is exclusively reserved for the USA. The question is, which Gambian authority agreed to reserve our petroleum resources for exclusive exploitation by the United States? Certainly not this government, and this will never happen. We are not anti-Western, but anti-colonialist, anti-neocolonialist, anti-satanic, anti-racist, and our subservience is only to the Almighty Allah alone, and our responsibility is to the Gambian people. As Muslims, we will not only practice our religion, but defend it from the North Pole to the South Pole without fear. We are aware that in such a position, we are on a collision course with the morally decadent and spiritually bankrupt anti-Islamic powers that be, but we shall never change our course. In Allah we believe, and Allah alone we fear and serve. As a government, we stand to defend not only the rights, dignity and interests of the Gambian people, but the entire African race, as blacks have suffered humiliation far too long at the hands of the West, and this will not be permitted to continue anymore. Despite our goodwill, which of course does not include surrender of our natural wealth to anybody, we have this despicable and immoral campaign of smear against the government and people of the Gambia. What is amazing and should be of concern to all civilized and morally upright people of the world is how these evil empires can go down so low as to be hoodwinked into believing these false claims against the Gambia government by these riffraff asylum seekers. The British government has been masterminding this campaign against the Gambia, and despite the fact that we are independent, they still continue to treat us as their colonial subjects. Certainly, the British Empire was founded by extraordinary brutality and the massive looting and shedding of the blood of Africans, Asians, and others. Its only legacy is exploitation. Even as we speak, blacks are being killed in the UK at the hands of the so-called neo-Nazis, skinheads, and racist BNP. The British government, instead of addressing the state-sponsored terrorism on British soil, concentrates on promoting false and outrageous statements about the human rights situation in the Gambia, even though our human rights record is better than that of the UK and USA put together. The government of Britain is not in a position to talk about democracy in any part of the world because the wealth it gathered is tainted with the blood of Africans, Asians, and indigenous peoples of the Americas over many centuries. It is bizarre that in Britain, the self-proclaimed champions of democracy, only blacks die at the hands of the police routinely. And recently, when the police shot dead a black man who did nothing wrong, this sparked days of rioting across England. The British government brought armored cars to the streets, describing the rioters as gangsters, and quelled the rioting with brute force characteristic of Britain. The government shut down all social media that reported the true picture and eventually took 9-year-old children to court at 4 a.m. for protesting against atrocities committed by the racist British government against minorities. Britain does not have the moral authority to preach human rights to the Gambia, and their campaign for the acceptance of homosexuality will never be tolerated in the Gambia. UK and US, who freely preach freedom of the press and information sharing openly, are still laying siege to a foreign embassy in London in violation of international law. Julian Assange's only crime is exercising the freedom of the press and democracy they have always been preaching to others. In the same West, a presidential plane was forced to land and subjected to search for 10 hours because they thought Snowden was on that plane. His only crime for which he is wanted dead or alive is exposing and informing humanity about programs that violate their privacy, freedom of speech, and association. These same Western powers preach press freedom and democracy daily, though they routinely invade and rob resources-rich countries of the Third World. These are Western countries where being black is tantamount to a death sentence which can be carried out by any white person in the street. We cannot accept the principles of any power that maintains one set of standards for themselves and another for the rest of mankind. The only standards we accept without question are those set out in the Holy Quran and the Holy Bible. Naturally, since these Western powers are challenging the laws of Allah, we will never accept their satanic values despite their hostile, racist, and despicable campaign of smear against the Gambia government, and by extension, the